75% of an individual's success is dictated by their emotional and social intelligence. And 75% of careers are derailed because of lack of emotional and social intelligence. Think about that for a second. In today's world, it's no longer just about the technical skills, but about the ability to elicit trust, build relationships, communicate effectively, and have social and situational awareness. Well, I had the honor of doing a major keynote for the California Human Resources Conference, where I talked to an audience of human resources professionals about the impact emotional and social intelligence has on your team. This is Rise Up For You TV, and we are all about elevating you and your team's performance for the skills that we actually never really get taught. Enjoy this keynote on emotional intelligence, the #1 game-changing skill you need today.
My name is Nedalina Nasruddin. Good morning to everyone that's watching at home. Hopefully next year we see you. So as you heard, my name is Neda. I'm the founder and CEO of Rise Up For You, but I didn't start that way. So I actually used to be a performer. That was my first career. I used to sing and dance and tour around the world with musical theater. Anybody sing and dance? Don't worry, I'm not gonna call on you. Okay, cool. And every time I walked into a room as a performer, I always stood center stage. Now, if you know anything about performing, you know that center stage is the place that you want to be. But the interesting thing is that I was never, ever the best singer in the room. That means that there was always 3 or 4 people that had better technique than I had. They had a 3-octave range, I had a 2.5-octave range. I started singing in my garage, they had parents that were celebrities. And they used to come up to me and they used to say, "How do I stand where you stand?" And I used to say, the only difference between you and I is your technique is actually better. I just walk into a room and I own the room. I communicate with the directors. I ask for feedback. I build relationships. Interestingly enough, when we went on tour, I saw the exact same thing happening on an organizational level. So a cast of 50 people, again, amazing technically. We were selling out shows, great marketing, but the biggest challenges that we had all came down to people. Poor communication, ineffective leadership, the inability to adjust our social awareness when we're in a new country, moving to a new town. A few years after that, I became an executive. I was 27 years old and I had 200 team members under me for an education corporation. And I saw the exact same challenges happening in the corporate workplace. Individuals that had PhDs, master's degrees, bachelor's degrees were getting in their own way of their success, and it was impacting their ability to communicate and to show up at work as their best. And we also saw this same challenge on an organizational level because companies are run by what? People. So I started to ask myself, okay, what makes some organizations more successful than others? What makes some people more successful than others? They have the same technique. They're the same organization, they do the same thing, but why is this company thriving and this one not? And we found that, of course, the majority of our success is not in fact made up by the marketing and the technical skill, but by the culture and the soft skills that your team embodies. Emotional and social intelligence, and that's what we're gonna dive in today. Now, for many of you, you're like, yep, I got it, emotional intelligence, I completely understand it, but in actuality, it's become a buzzword today. And many individuals have a very basic understanding of what it means. And we all need to understand the deep dive of EQ, because that is where the transformation in your company and your team will succeed and move forward. So we're gonna dive into this today. I hope you have a notepad because I'm gonna give you a ton of information. So just on a basic level, what is emotional intelligence? The capacity to recognize our own feelings, of course, to manage ourselves, and to recognize feelings in others and to motivate and influence others. Now, it was pioneered by 2 individuals, Peter Savoy and John Mayer, not the musician, although I love him, and it became popular by Daniel Goleman. So if you go online right now and you were to type in emotional intelligence, you'll see Daniel Goleman pop up. He did an interview with Oprah, he did a TED Talk, so he really became the ambassador for it. So we understand that there's 4 pillars to this, and most of you probably understand this part, okay? The first pillar is self-awareness, and I'm actually gonna break this down for you. That's all things self, okay? Just you. The second pillar is self-management. Now we move on to pillars number 3 and 4 that have to do with you and how you play with others. So that's social awareness and relationship management. But again, the challenge is most individuals don't understand or know that there's actually another 18 competencies that fall under this. And every challenge that you're experiencing in the workplace today with your team and with people fall under emotional and social intelligence. When people come to us and say we need diversity training, I say we start here. When people come to us and say we need communication, I say we start here because it all falls under EQ. EQ or EI, emotional quotient or emotional intelligence. So we're gonna do a deep dive, but did you know that 75% of careers are derailed because of a lack of EQ? That's a big number. And I will tell you that when companies work with my team and they have to let somebody go, it's never because of their technical skill or that they don't do a good job at their job. It's always because of something that has to do with the human skills. They have a bad attitude. They're not motivated. They don't show up on time. They cause drama. They're constantly in conflict, or they're not leading with integrity. And so we have to let them go. Now, we saw this a few weeks ago at the Oscars, right? I'm not gonna go any further than that. And we laugh about it, but the sad truth is that an individual that spent his whole life building a reputation in his profession in 1 second of a lack of EQ destroyed that on camera. Now, this happens every single day in the workplace, not on that extreme of a level, I hope not, okay? So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna break this down. What are the 18 EQ competencies that you need to know? And those of you that are at home, follow us online. You can take screenshot, you can take pictures, enjoy. So we're gonna start with self-awareness. This is pillar number 1. I could talk about this for 25 hours straight. I wrote an entire book on it. These 3 competencies are the very beginning of any leader, manager, entrepreneur, anybody that is running a team. We have to start here. So I'm gonna break down these 3 competencies. Emotional awareness, number 1. Do you have the ability to be aware of the emotions that you feel beyond the basic 7? Instead of saying, I'm angry, I'm upset, I'm happy, can you say, I'm frustrated because I feel unheard in the meeting and I feel unseen and negated? That's a lot more clear in communication than just, I'm angry. Because what happens when a team member says, I'm angry? Your next question is why, right? And then we need to get further into the emotion. So if you have an emotional awareness beyond the basic level, you're able to communicate on a different level that can provide more solutions. Meaning that we can't see everything about ourselves because we exist in our own skin, right? So accurate self-assessment is the way that you see yourself. Do people on the outside see you and view you the same way? So I'll give you an example. When I was 27 years old, as I mentioned, I was an executive. I had 200 people under me. I thought I was the best leader ever. I had an open door policy. I wanted to coach people, mentor them. Crickets. Nobody walked into my office. And then one day somebody said, well, you're kind of intimidating. I said, that's not true. That's your belief, not mine. And then another person said, well, you're not approachable. And I said, no, I don't think so. No, I'm approachable. So I decided to do an anonymous survey as an executive. Out of 200 individuals, 75% said I was intimidating, not approachable, and I looked mad all the time. I cried when I got that feedback, but I realized that even though on the inside I felt a certain way, and on the inside I wanted to coach and mentor and support my team, there was a disconnect on the outside. I had a blind spot. So my energy wasn't showing up that way, or I wasn't greeting my team that way, or I didn't have the warmth. So my assessment of myself was not accurate. And if I didn't do that survey, I would have continued to lead that way. So I started to make adjustments so that I can break that barrier between my team and I. Now, many of you probably have a ton of great leaders in your workplace, but also struggle with that same idea or concept that there's things about themselves that they can't see, but you can see. How many of us resonate with that, right? With our team? Yeah? Okay. And the third competency, again, I can talk about this all day, is self-confidence. Self-confidence. So my team and I in 2021, we asked 2,000 working professionals, not furloughed, but in the workplace, what their number 1 challenge was. 83% said self-confidence. 83%. Imposter syndrome, perfectionist mindset, not feeling enough, struggling to raise their hand and take risk. That is a huge number. And we saw this magnified when COVID hit, because so many individuals built what I call micro-confidence. which is a confidence in categories or competencies. You're confident at selling. Maybe you're confident at coding. I'm confident as a speaker. So we have a workforce and a culture that has built their value on these micro competencies. But what happens when something like a pandemic hits and now your job goes away, your title goes away, your money goes away, and all these things that you've defined yourself as go away, where your self-worth and your value go away too. And what we need to start building, not enough if they don't feel enough. So now when you give a team member feedback about that email, it's no longer about the email, it's about them, right? So being able to give feedback is going to be really critical for individuals to build that self-confidence. How many of us can resonate with the self-confidence piece either individually or seeing it within your team, right? Absolutely. It's a huge thing. So that in itself, that's just the first pillar of emotional intelligence. We didn't even get to the other three yet.